Hello, dear friends, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And in today's video, we'll continue studying games of Arsen Yegiazarian, Coach Arsen. And here I analyzed another very interesting game and end game. So Coach Arsen with the black pieces 25-24. He's playing Atakisi Umut 23-23. So this is 2003. And yes, white just went 92. White is threatening to take on f4. If you take 92, then rook d5 comes. And here, of course, black is having a lot of problems. I can easily move my bishop and then a5 is falling. And here, dear viewers, please, you can pause the video. Black to play, how would you go? And yes, hope you are ready. Rook takes h2. Of course, white needs to take on f4. We go rook takes d2. Knight d5, rook takes d5, knight g6. We go king f7. Knight captures on h8, king g7. And this is very surprisingly completely winning for black. You don't have rook h1, bishop h1 comes. And slowly black will take knight on h8. And I have two very strong pawns in the center, pawn on f6 and pawn on e5. And white cannot do anything. Rook f1 with the ideas if king takes h8, king c1. Of course, here rook f6 doesn't work because rook d1 checkmates. You just go king c1, attacking the rook, and then you take on f6. Of course, white is not worse. But here, Coach Arsen continues showing his very high level and goes bishop e4. No need to rush with capturing on h8, bishop d3. Some small tactics. Of course, if you take rook d3, white doesn't take with the c pawn because bishop d3 comes. I have this in between move, and then I will take c takes d. Of course, white is having real chances to not lose. Maybe even white is already better. Bishop takes d3 takes and another classy move. Of course, here you have some other moves, no doubts, because knight cannot go out, and king is controlling the knight. But b3, another classy move. King c1 takes, rook h1, trying to defend this knight on h8, rook d4, threatening another pawn, and now captures. Eventually here white decided to give up all the thoughts to rescue this knight on h8 and here king h8. Completely winning rook endgame, trying to cut off our king on h8, rook c4, and another classy move, rook b4. If you take a takes b, pawn endgames are winning. Of course, you don't have time to come closer to and win my pawn on b4 and then start pushing your b pawn. And now takes. Yes, here many different ways are there to win the game. Rook b4, a4. Yes, if you take on a5, then I just go king g7, and now a4, and now rook f4. And here, of course, white resigned. Let's continue. And another one. Let me close this one. Coach Arsen with the black pieces 25-13 against Vadim Alexeyev 24-40. 2000. He just played rook d7 we have close to equal position. White is having different moves. You can go queen e4, you can go queen c4, you can also play h3. In this position, Vadim Alexeyev went d4. Makes some sense. You are trying to activate and open some diagonals, some files for your pieces, but of course, Vadim miscalculated. C takes d, and here the only move is, and the best move is to capture with the bishop. Of course, black isn't having any real difficulties, white as well. Most likely game will end in a draw after massive trades. But here knight takes d4. Huge blunder by Alexeyev. Please, you can pause the video. Black to play. How would you go? It doesn't seem very difficult. Yes, hope you are ready. Of course, you don't have time for bishop e2 because knight e6 comes. If you go knight d4, I can take bishop h5 at least. And your knight on d4 doesn't do anything. You will have some problems. But here coach Arsen goes and sees very beautiful, simple but very beautiful tactical idea. Rook takes d4. And now doesn't matter how do you capture on d4. I have ideas to go bishop e2. He takes d. Yes, I need to. Maybe Vadim Alexeyev, he saw rook takes d4, he takes d. Maybe he hoped that if queen takes e2, rook e1 ideas are there, or some d5 ideas are there. And if you take bishop e2, then white is pushing d5 and some threats are there. But I checked with engines. Black is having few ways to secure big advantage. And here queen takes e2 by coach Arsen. Bishop e2 also works. Computer likes capturing with the bishop even more. Yes, you need to push d5, and now bishop takes d1. You need to take with the queen, because if you go rook d1, then I have these b5 ideas, and if queen b5, your rook on d1 is not protected. If I'm not mistaken, rook d8 is the move, is the winning move. After queen b5, and if you take with the queen e4 and d takes c, b takes c, honestly speaking, it doesn't seem completely winning for black, but engines are showing huge advantage for black. Yes, you can start advancing, pushing your c pawn, and your pieces are well placed. Coach Arsen went queen takes e2, d5, b5. Because if you don't play b5, then I have these ideas of rook e1. So b5, of course, you cannot take with the rook, you cannot take with the queen. Queen h4. And here the best and the winning move is to go knight e5. Of course, slowly I will consolidate my position with black pieces. And once I stabilize, black is winning. And if you go rook e1, queen d3, move is there, and c3 bishop is under attack, and of course rook on b1 as well. So whenever you capture with the bishop on e5, I can always take with the rook back. So my bishops easily will stop this pawn on d5. Rook e4, not the strongest, because here white went queen g3, but queen h3 is the strongest move to continue. What's the difference? Queen h3 Bishop g4, queen g3, queen c4, threatening bishop d1. Let's say if you take d takes c, I can of course continue bishop d1. But now f3. And if you take here, d takes c. And surprisingly, rook on e4, bishop on g4 are hanging, are under attack. So white is very close to equalize the game. So queen h3 would give very real chances for equality. White went queen g3, and now rook g4 and queen c4 are winning. Rook d3, if you take, then bishop takes, and queen c6. White does not have any real threats. Black slowly will start pushing A and B pawns. Yes, queen is well placed on g3, bishop on c3 as well, but no enough threats. Always I can retreat my rook to e8 if need be. Queen c4, rook d3, knight d4, bishop d4, rook takes d4, rook d4, queen d4, queen b8, bishop g6, queen d5. Yes, completely winning position for black. White continued queen a7, bishop e4, attacking on g2, bishop takes g2, rook b1, bishop h3, and here in this position, Vadim Alexeyev resigned. One mistake, instead of capturing on d4 with the bishop and having equality, white went knight d4. I assume white didn't really blunder rook d4. Maybe in further calculations they made some they missed something, and coach Arsen, of course, calculated everything precisely and won the game. Let's continue. I prepared another game, and so this one, coach Arsen with the white pieces 2498 is playing against Arman Pashikian 2532, Armenian National Championship 2007. So coach Arsen started the game with d4, c4, and we have Nimzo with e3, a short castle bishop d3, d5, and knight e2. Nowadays, I would say a3, and maybe c takes d and knight f3 moves are more popular than knight e2. But anyway, very much possible move, very interesting move. So c5 by Arman Pashikian. Another choice is d takes c, bishop c4, c5, trying to attack the center. Later on, you can go knight c6. With the black pieces, you can always capture on d4. So c5, c takes d. Again, you can take on d5 with the pawn, not really with the knight. You can take with the pawn. And white is having ideas to go a3. So c takes d, e takes d. And again, black is choosing to take on d5 with the knight or with the pawn. But if you take with the pawn, then short castle. I have always ideas to go bishop g5. I can also activate my knight from e2, maybe knight g3, maybe knight e4, knight f4. So white will have some activity. Knight takes d5, short castle, and knight c6. More or less, we got a well-known theoretical position. And here coach Arsen goes a3. White anyway needs this move to control b4 square, to not let any after retreating the bishop to d6, e7 or a5, some knight b4 ideas, knight d b4 or knight c b4. And also slowly you are preparing bishop c2, queen d3 ideas, or maybe queen c2. And here Arman Pashikian went bishop e7, very decent move. Another alternatives are to go bishop a5. You can also try to bring your bishop to b6, putting more pressure on d4. And another move is to go bishop d6. No need to be scared of knight d5, e takes d. White solves the problem of isolated pawn on d4, but black is of course opening light squared bishop. Bishop e7 and rook e1, a useful move. Bishop f6, putting more pressure on d4, bishop c2. And here computer likes and suggests queen b6, attacking on d4 and of course threatening some knight d4 or maybe even bishop d4. Most likely white will go queen d3, some g6. White can also always consider taking on d5. Knight e7, very interesting move with the ideas to get the knight on g6 or maybe on f5, also preparing this bishop d7, bishop c6 ideas. Knight e4, bishop d7, knight takes, bishop g5. And here if you go bishop c6, then always I can take on f6, g takes f, and maybe you have some small problems with your king side. I don't think it's something very dangerous because your knight is coming to g6. You always can go king h8 and rook g8. So it doesn't seem dangerous for black at all. But I'm not even sure that Coach Arsen was really threatening to take on f6. He was maybe just placing bishop on g5 and thinking later on whenever it's more convenient for white to capture on f6. So knight g6 and here h4. Slowly we are getting into some concrete actions. So white is threatening h5 and later on h6. And after h5 you don't have many good squares for the knight on g6. And starting from here, Arman Pashikian made some small inaccuracies. So the best here would have been to go h6. I'm sure that both Coach Arsen and Arman Pashikian, they have seen h6, but I assume Arman didn't like h5. Because where do you go with the knight on g6? Of course, we aren't seriously considering knight h8. And if you go knight e7, but just a couple of moves ago, you brought your knight to g6. And if you takes, maybe this position looked unpleasant for Arman Pashikian, for black. But engines are showing that f takes g comes. Yes, my pawn structure is ruined, but I have open f file, and you don't have any real threats with white pieces, and your pieces aren't enough well placed. I can always consider playing some queen c7 ideas, looking the other side of the board on king side. So here, according to engines, black doesn't have any real problems. Instead of going h6, Arman Pashikian went bishop c6, another clever decision, temporary stopping h5, because h5, why doesn't h5 work? You can pause the video. I hope you are ready. Yes, queen d5 comes, attacking on g5 and attacking on g2, threatening checkmate in 1. So h5 isn't really working here. Knight c3, taking control over d5 and not allowing any queen d5 ideas. And here Arman went wrong, queen a5. I think his idea was to stop h5 ideas anyway, because after queen a5, bishop on g5 is under attack, but he maybe forgot some ideas like b4, and then if you go queen c7, white continues playing very simple chess and black is in some trouble. Again, the strongest is maybe to go h6, but h5 comes. I think we are already familiar with this idea. And no doubts, your bishop isn't that well placed on c6, then my knight on c3. So compared to previous h6, this is some small achievement and better version for white. Queen a5 and now b4. You have to go queen c7. Now, of course, you have knight f4 ideas, you have bishop takes g2 and then queen c3. But very surprisingly, nothing is really working for black. Rook c1. Of course, not allowing any bishop g2 because I can always take and at least take on g6 because your queen in the end of the line will be hanging on c3. And if you go knight f4, I have different ideas. I can take on f6 and start some checks. I have also some d5 ideas. Because queen d7. But this already, of course, doesn't look natural. Playing queen a5 and then queen c7, queen d7, white played b4 and rook c1. So h5, knight d5. Again, if you move the knight, then I have bishop f6. I have h6 ideas. Slowly, I'm exposing black's position, knight d5. Again, if you take on g6, I have knight c3 ideas. And if you take on d5, then queen takes d5. Maybe this was Arman's idea. He wanted to use the same idea like few moves ago, but unfortunately for black, the same idea here doesn't really work. Knight takes d5, queen takes d5, and queen g4. My knight is not on e2. I have queen g4 moves, and white is defending on g5, defending on g2, and also at the same time threatening knight on g6. Arman continued, but position is already very unpleasant. f5 and now queen h3. Your knight on g6 is under attack. I'm ready to capture on g6. You don't have knight e7. You don't have any other good squares for the knight. And knight h8. You can pause the video because if black manages to get the knight on f7, position will be anyway very unpleasant, but not completely lost. Yes. Because of having our queen on h3, we have access to one very important square, bishop b3. Attacking the queen, attacking on e6, and unfortunately for black, their position collapses. Takes, bishop takes e6, knight f7, queen takes f5. Black is completely tied up, h6, bishop e7, and here in this position, Arman Pashikian resigned. Thank you very much, dear friends. This is all what I prepared for today's video. I hope you liked. Please like and subscribe. And don't forget to write down your thoughts in the comments. Thank you very much.